distance based on the speed limit. And then there's this little green line that is the minimum stopping sight distance because there is a 25-mile-an-hour truck speed for any trucks that will be heading south on Chestnut Ridge Drive. And that is a regulatory posting, not a warning sign. So at the intersection of the unnamed township road, there will be a need for some clearing of some overgrowth along here to meet the required sight distance through here. And then looking to the right, obviously there's an intersection. You come to a stop-controlled intersection of Kunkletown Road. It doesn't go through here. So we have sight distance to that intersection. We did that also for the next intersection. This is as you come up to the stop sign at Chestnut Ridge Drive and Kunkletown Road. Again, same color coordination we had before. The minimum required is shown in red. The blue is what the available sight distance is that was measured at that location. And one of the things I forgot to point out is these are existing intersections. They're not new intersections that we're adding that we would need to get PennDOT's permission to permit as a new intersection. They're there today. Cars and trucks can drive through them today. Next intersection we were asked to look at is Silver Spring Boulevard and Kunkletown Road, which I just talked about. We're doing the additional analysis for. The red line is the required sight distance based on the posted speed limit. So the speed limit in this area is 45 miles an hour. So you could see that recently. I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but there was some embankment removal along here to improve that sight line. We also added the green line here. As you come through this curve and the next intersection, there's 15-mile-an-hour advisory plaques that advise you you're coming through a curve. You should slow down to 15. That's what's shown in these green lines here. The sight distance to the right is this red line. Again, if a vehicle tried to come through here at 45 miles an hour, they would need to see from here all the way through to there. These are both state roads. This is Silver Spring Boulevard and Kunkletown Road. And the last intersection that we had looked at was Corral Road. No traffic for this site would travel on this. This is a township road. It's a stop sign condition. Everybody, I would assume, knows there's a building right here that does affect sight distance. So when vehicles pull out, what we observed is a lot of them would stop further back so they could see around the building before they would pull out. But this certainly does create a sight distance obstruction looking to the right. And that is something that we do recommend the township works with PennDOT to address. So that is the end of the slides as far as what we looked at for sight distance and analysis. I would certainly be happy to answer any questions unless there's something else I missed. I guess I'll refer to you. I'm sorry.
My name is Linda Kyle. I live approximately a mile from the drilling site. Are you familiar, the gentleman, I'm assuming y'all are from Nestle, are you familiar with the school up here and the community center on Kunkletown Road? Eric?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. A couple of times I heard you say that you would not use township roads. If there was an accident and there was a death, the state police would shut that road down for anywhere between 4 and 6 hours. Is Nestle going to shut down their production for that time? That's my first question.
Don't come up my road.
Good question. If Kunkletown Road was closed due to an accident, yes, we would stop our operations.
Okay, you would not take an alternate route on a township road?
No, not onto a township road. For example, if there was an accident on Silver Spring Road, the secondary route that was identified by Earl on these maps would be a potential route for us to continue using.
Okay, so you would shut down for those 4 to 6 hours. And when the attorneys came the next day and the road again was shut down for 4 to 6 hours, you would again limit your traffic. You would stop traffic.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, Don Moore. I was wondering if Well, quite frankly, I was rushed with the last guy, and maybe I can get it through you. Is the 3 trucks per hour or 6 trips, is that related, rounded off? Is that related to the 245 figure maximum?
Yeah, I actually took a cheat sheet here, so I didn't bring a calculator up. 200,000 gallons is the average per day.
Correct.
We divide that by a truck, which carries the 6,500 gallons. In one truck, you get just under 31 trucks. If we divide that by the 17 hours a day that they're permitted to operate, it would be 1.8 trucks. So we rounded that up to 2, and that was an average.
Right.
And then for the maximum, we actually looked at the maximum rate that was discussed about what could be pumped out in a given day.
Correct.
And also looked at the storage, just to get a worst case scenario.
Okay.
That came out to 305,000 gallons. We
Okay.
divided that by 6,500, we got 47 trucks. We divided that by 17 hours, we got 2.8 trucks. And we rounded that up to 3. So instead of the 47 trucks, we looked at the 60 trucks.
Okay, got that.
Yes.
Now, next question. I'm hearing about the study you did about the impact of intersections. What about the impact on people riding on these roads and getting stuck behind trucks? Is there anything in your study that analyzes how they're going to be delayed? By trucks obeying, what I'm hearing is a maximum speed limit for trucks, just et cetera, going up hills, going through the gears.
Sure. The speed limit for the trucks would not be affected in any way by what Nestle is doing. That's for trucks that would be coming down Chestnut Ridge Drive. Those would be existing trucks. None of the trucks for Nestle would come out of the driveway and make a left or come down Chestnut Ridge Drive and make the right in for that. So they would come to this stop sign, they would make this right, which is a very short distance. I believe it's about 300 feet, as you can see there. Then they would make this left here. What we look at from an operation standpoint is the intersection delay. What would the overall delay be here during the worst hour? And what would the overall delay be at the next intersection in a worst hour?
Okay, so
if you, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
I just wanted to refocus on my question, which is, I'm seeing A's and a B in your chart. I can tell you, I can predict that I would grade this as a C or a D, being stuck behind these trucks every 10 minutes.
Yeah, if
The
you,
probability of being stuck behind a truck when I got onto the road.
right, if you pull out and you are the vehicle directly behind that truck, obviously that's going to delay you. If we look at that one instantaneous vehicle, if we look at the vehicles over the course of an hour, there's the other 54 minutes that you could pull out, and you wouldn't be behind a truck, and you would go the same as you would today. There's trucks on the road today, there's cars on the road today, but
It'll be
yeah,
a
if
lot
you get
more.
behind a truck, you're
Okay,
gonna,
I'll
it'll take
finish
a
off
little
with
longer.
this question. Did you do any study on the impact on a school bus that got hit from behind from one of these loaded trucks when the brakes failed?
No, I certainly can't speak to the probability of the truck's brakes failing and a school bus being directly in front of it and what that impact would be.
Okay, thank you.
I would say that would be very
That road has a
infrequent.
lot of school stops on Silver Spring Boulevard, with kids going to PV.
Did you do that study?
I don't know, did they do that
Did
study?
you do that study?
I'm not
on
sure what the
buses?
question was. I'm sorry, go
Silver
ahead.
Spring Boulevard has a lot
I
of
was
school
waiting for
bus
the
stops.
gentleman at the
What about the safety of the children that are getting on the school buses on Silver Springs Boulevard while these trucks are barreling down there 45 miles an hour?
Sure, well, every truck driver has to be a licensed truck driver, whether they drive for Nestle or they drive for somebody else, same as a car.
Was there study done for that? God forbid a child's getting on a bus and they don't realize going around the turn that bus is stopped and the child's getting off?
Well, the truck would need to drive so that they see the school bus as they would anywhere else in the world and make sure that they drive safely and do not run into the school bus. Yes, sir.
Hi, I would like to continue my question that I asked earlier, since this is transportation.
Okay.
What is the grade on Chestnut Ridge?
Well, the grade on Chestnut Ridge certainly varies. At the top end of Chestnut Ridge, where we won't have
Go
any
ahead.
trucks, it's,
Go ahead.
I believe, 12%, but I would like to verify
Would you
that.
say 12% was rather steep?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, what is the weight limit on the bridge? Because that's a bridge they're crossing.
The bridge, just so I'm sure I'm correct, you're talking about the bridge on Chestnut Ridge.
At the bottom by the
Yep.
stop sign.
That bridge is not posted, so in Pennsylvania, you can run vehicles up to 80,000 pounds over any unposted bridge.
And your water truck weighs how much?
Just under 80,000 pounds.
Just under 80,000.
Is that empty?
Okay, so you're,
That's full, I'm sorry, that's full.
that's full, which equates to over 36 tons. And you want to run it over that bridge. You want to break the road up.
Well, if it would break the road up or break the bridge up, PennDOT would post the bridge. They do inspections
PennDOT
of
is
the
served by
bridge.
Stroudsburg. In an ice storm or a snowstorm, is a truck that weighs more than likely 40 tons going to be able to stop at the stop sign?
Well, the trucks for Nestle will be coming out of here from a stop condition, and this
Yes.
area is relatively flat, which is why the bridge is here over the,
No,
the
it's
creek.
not flat. It's not flat at all.
It's relatively flat.
Your
It's not-
moment
it's not
of
15%.
inertia is so intense that the force of that truck coming down that hill in an ice storm and a snowstorm is going to kill somebody.
I would disagree that a truck pulling out from here would not be able to stop 300
Okay,
feet away
fine.
at a
Would you
stop sign.
stand in front of the truck for me and I will try a test run?
I
in the ice?
generally try not to stand in a roadway. That's not something
Are
I
you
do.
ready to put your credentials on the line?
Sir, with all due respect, why would I stand in
I'm
front of
telling you, this is a danger issue. An extreme danger issue.
Sir, there are
Monroe-
trucks that use this roadway now at this
Excuse
intersection.
me, I have lived around here 44 years. Monroe County DOT does not maintain that road as well as you'd like us to believe.
I didn't speak to how
No,
Monroe
you don't want
DOT
to address the
maintains that
safety
road.
issue here.
Let me talk about another part of our study. We were asked to look at crash data. So we went back and we requested the last 5-year accident history for those 4 intersections that I just mentioned, and they are in our traffic report.
But how is that relevant when you have a 40-ton truck?
Well, we're looking at what
Full of
is at the intersection
6,500
to
gallons
see
of
if we
water.
have existing operations. These roadways are open today. They have cars and trucks on them. And we want to see, are there any existing crash clusters that we should look at, and maybe there's a way to improve those situations. And we did not have any accidents reported in the 5-year history at those 4 intersections. There were 2 single vehicle accidents that hit a fixed object, not a truck, it was a car, along the roadway segments that we
Okay,
looked
so
at.
now you've created danger zone 1. Danger zone 2 is going to be at the end of 209 Silver Springs Road. How is any truck going to make a left there? Please help me out here, maybe I'm stupid.
As we stand here today, trucks can go to that intersection and make a right or left turn out. It is a state
Nobody
intersection.
lets them make a left.
They have
That's a
that
high
right.
traffic area.
We looked at the sight distance there, and you do have adequate sight distance at that intersection.
I don't agree, and the people from Creskyville do not agree with what you're saying. Let me tell you, my name, I am Annette Vasquez. I live in Creskyville, and I can tell you that I went to the last meeting in the township, and the people from Creskyville are very concerned about your route, because what you want to do is throw all these trucks through Palmerton, and as soon as that bridge is made in 209, your plan is to put everybody through Silver Spring roads with all the buses and trying to make lefts in an intersection that doesn't have the space. And this is what the township supervisor said, and I heard. So I don't know how you did your traffic study. I'm a physician. I know and I read and I know how to analyze scientific data. Now, in that intersection, on a truck of that length, with that width, to make a left is gonna be a major, major thing for safety. And all of you who are sitting there, who have grandchildren driving through our roads, and know how many of our kids die in our roads, now you're gonna tell me how this is going to affect this community. Are you from here, by the way? Do you drive in our roads all the time?
Do not drive on your roads all the time.
Of course you
Oh,
don't.
okay, so you're coming here and making a study on one day that you walk around and you drive around and you look a little, but you don't know how this community works. And that is my point. I'm talking for my patients, I'm talking for the people in this community. And now you want to start the trucks from 6 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night? Excuse me?
And again, I want to reiterate, and a lot of you make very, very good points. And by what you say here, they're not going to change their submittal. What you need to do is, we are hearing it, your Board of Supervisors hears it, and we have professionals that we have hired, that we've put into place that are experts, just like the gentleman making the presentation, and that there is a concern, which I believe there is, which we all believe there is. That's the steps that we're going to take, and we've empowered a zoning hearing board to review this data and make recommendations.
This is a human thing. We're talking here about people, human beings, okay?
But what I'm saying is the impact of our conversations here today, we have entrusted the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, as well as the people that we employ, our attorneys, our solicitors, as well as our engineers and hydrogeologists. And being from Polk Township, I would encourage you to speak to the people from Polk Township.
I have.
Well, then they need to speak, they would have a right.
They will.
Then that's good. That's good. That's good.
Because this is going to affect everybody. Do you think we want all these trucks growing through the
And what
center
I
of
think you should do,
Crestville?
and you are, is address
Starting at 6 o'clock in the
You need to
morning?
address us. I have a
Why don't you go 9 to 5?
I have a question. You referenced 80,000 pounds.
Yes.
The weight of the water is 54,145 pounds.
Right.
So the tractor and the trailer have to be approximately 25,000 pounds.
Right.
The trailer would be approximately, if you get an ultralight trailer, probably around 11,000 pounds. So you're going to get a tractor to safely haul approximately 65,000 pounds, that a tractor of that low value is not geared up to haul that much weight.
Okay.
I mean,
I would have to.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hi, I'm Chuck Gallagher. I actually run logistics fleet, so the tankers are under my control. We do this every day right now. So we are running 6,500 gallon, and we are under 80,000 pounds from our other springs.
And what's the weight of your tractor?
You're about on. It's about 25,000.
So it's a single cab, guy can't even bring his lunch.
Oh, I'm sure you could bring a lunch, but it is a single.
He
It's a
probably
day
can't carry
cab.
more than 100 pounds worth of fuel.
Sir, they're over the weight limit of that bridge. And that's against the law in the Commonwealth of
Let's
PA.
have a state cop sit there.
Well, it's 80,000 pounds.
It's against the law.
Exactly.
No,
No,
There is
they're
a weight
under
limit on that bridge.
And that's that.
Which bridge are you talking about?
The bridge, if it's not referenced, the weight limit's 80,000. Is that right? If it's not referenced or signage,
yes.
the weight limit's 80,000.
Correct.
It doesn't mean that is the weight limit. It means you can't run over 80,000. It could handle bridges. Certain bridges could handle a lot more than 80,000, but in Pennsylvania, if it is not posted, you are allowed to run 80,000 without a
So
special
you would
hauling
feel
permit.
comfortable for that tractor hauling this volume to West Coast?
Yeah, I do it every day.
It's on the weight limit.
It's not overweight.
No, they have to be under the weight limit.
So you're telling me also that this tractor, there is they have to stop there because there's traffic, and then you have these 80,000 whatever standing in the middle of the bridge, waiting for all the traffic to clear.
Try to use the microphone to drive.
Yeah, I guess we'll try to. Next is the microphone.
But I don't live in Kunkletown.
My name's Marta Sweeney. I live on Silver Spring Boulevard.
By the way,
I checked the site. Are these the only site checks that you have done?
that's why they go to Africa.
Yes, we had a a scoping meeting with PennDOT, the township's engineer, and the township representatives, and we said, what are we going to study? What intersections are we going to look at? These were the intersections that we were tasked with looking at. That's correct.
So the majority of Silver Springs Boulevard, other than Bridgeway, Speed, has not been looked at.
Are you talking about sight distance at like every other road or intersection along
I'm
Silver
suggesting
Spring?
we do a site distance of Kearney Road, Molasses Valley Road, and Mountain View Road. It's not so bad coming down, going down the site. I can't imagine a truck's going down and a school bus right there. And Silver Spring Boulevard utilizes Silver Spring Boulevard to get to, and it takes Molasses Valley Road, it takes Kearney Road, it takes Mountain View Road, back and forth. Has Nestle or you contacted the Pleasant Valley School System that these children are in? I mean, I know you're here in Eldred,
Right.
but our buses and it's utilized by a lot of buses, not one or two, pretty much. And there's probably 10 buses in the hours of 7 in the morning, actually 6:45 till 20 after 8 in the morning, and again at 3 in the afternoon until 4:15. And I don't want a bus on that road with your trucks coming down loaded between that area, because it's a straightaway. If they gotta make up time, they got caught up here. And haulers haul. They're making money when they're hauling.
Well, I think maybe you can speak to that as well as far as speed and.
Right. So these are contracted. So them going faster will actually get them fired. So they, off of my schedule, they know how many they're going to pull a day. So they don't make money by going any faster.
Do they
Are
make
they-
any money?
yes.
Well, I saw one of your
Yeah.
diagrams where it says it's estimated, or how long it's gonna take them to get from the site to Botley.
Yes.
And I'm not sure, but that was studied, and it was studied for the route of Silver Spring Boulevard. And if it wasn't totally cited, you know, on where they're seeing and where they're not seeing, or that there's school buses, and you will have to, whether you like it or not. I mean, there's things we gotta put up with, but you're gonna have school buses. So slow your time up, and I suggest you study it, because it's gonna be a tragedy, and a big tragedy, because those buses stop. I've had 5 accidents in the 5 years, 1 fatality in my front yard. Coming down Silver Spring Boulevard, crossing, just cruising. It's a straight line, they make up their time there. Even the residents do it. And there's 1 fatality. One was 3 weeks ago, ran into my Lowe's truck making a delivery. An elderly woman didn't expect him to be there.
It is a dangerous road.
3 weeks ago.
It is.
And it's not the intersection, it just turns into a flat spot. As soon as you come out, I think it needs to be studied. You know, because it's a tragedy gonna happen.
Yeah, I have a question. 6 a.m. I work late, and maybe I live right on Silver Spring, but I actually don't get back from work until about 5 or 6. So I mean, maybe I'm being a little selfish, but 6 a.m. seems absurdly early in the morning to be running truckers. I know this is a family community. Most of us have kids and such, and there's school bus drivers and there's stuff, and like I said, that's probably when I'm coming home, so I know I'm not going to be able. I moved away from the city to get away from this crap, and you guys are bringing it right back in our backyard. So I would like to know why.
Go somewhere else.
Yeah, please go somewhere else, please. But my question is, 6 a.m. is insanely early in the morning. Why? I mean, that's crazy.
When we looked at the hours of operation, I'm talking to a microphone that's not there. Thank you.
It's not funny. This isn't funny, guys.
It's not funny.
It's not a joke. It's not a joke.
Okay, when we looked at the hours of operation, we looked at the zoning for when they would be prohibited from running, and that's what we base the hours of operation on is based on the townships.
Can I ask you a question? If there was trucks running through your town with children at 6 a.m. in the morning, would you want these trucks running through your town at 6 a.m. in the morning, right next door to your house? My house shakes when a truck goes by. It shakes. I can't sleep when a truck goes by, and it sucks. I used to come here as a kid. There's been whatever, but I'm just telling you, my house shakes. So when your trucks pass by and I'm coming back to go to bed, my house is going to shake, which means I'm probably not going to get good sleep. So I just want you to know from personal experience.
I have a question.
Any more traffic or?
Yes.
With regards to this, the longer I stay, the more questions I have. I want to rid of me. I'm Dr. Baker. I'm a semi-retired physician for 45 years. Anyway, having been in the Navy, it reminds me of something the Navy kind of passed on to other disciplines, like practice of medicine, hospital practice, things like that. It's called root cause analysis. You see, if somebody gets killed or there's a major accident, well, that's not going to tell us anything. The damage happened. If there's safe practices going on, that's great. Now, on a carrier, on a U.S. Navy carrier, not like a Chinese Navy, they want to know what the near misses are. I don't know if you folks ever heard of root cause analysis. If you have, please, raise your hands. No, I want these gentlemen, the experts. Root cause analysis. Have you taken that into consideration about things like the traffic, things like the operation that we're not going to see? And another thing is, there are roadways in Pennsylvania that are considered closed to commercial traffic. I wonder, have you done a comparison with those roads with this? I'm just curious. Have you? Raise your hand. Okay, you haven't. Sorry about that.
Just to clarify, I'm not the traffic engineer, so I would expect the traffic engineer, if that's an appropriate study to do, I would do that.
I want to hear you.
Dr. Baker, I'm just saying I answered your question. I have heard of root cause analysis. I do not perform root cause analysis. If it's an appropriate study to be done by our traffic engineer, then I would encourage him to complete that study as well.
What about the engineer, traffic engineer? I'm sorry.
I am the traffic engineer.
I'm just saying. What about the traffic engineer?
I am the traffic engineer.
Oh,
That's what I was, yep.
Have we made any comparisons with other truck routes? Are we now a commercial truck route? Are we supposed to have traffic cameras, etc., to see what's going on in our intersections?
Do you mean like ITS cameras that you see, like PennDOT Zoom cameras that PennDOT deploys in certain highways? Is that what you're
like the ones that'll give us a ticket if we go too fast or go through a red light, etc.?
Oh, speed cameras. No. There's no speed cameras that I'm aware of out here, and there's no ITS cameras that are out here.
Yeah.
We did look at the roadways to make sure that these roadways were permitted to have trucks on them. We met with PennDOT, who owns and maintains the roadways, and they acknowledged as long as we are within the length and weight requirements, trucks can run either from Nestle or any other business on these roadways.
Maybe age imparts a certain amount of caution as we go on through life, but I hope these guys have the same concerns as I have when I'm driving my pickup down these curves and around these curves. It's a concern. I won't ask you more about that. Now, but the root cause analysis, I would like to know how much you have employed as far as this situation with us. We're concerned. Now, that being said, you folks presented your side of the issue and what you're going to, I'll use this term loosely, offer us, okay? But you started back in 2012. We didn't know about it. We should have, and if we had, we'd have had more time to prepare certain requests of our own in a presentation to Nestle. That's fair. You want something from us? We want something from you. This is a little village. There are a lot of improvements. public improvements, municipal concerns like a municipal water supply for us, improve our schools, our roads, our sidewalks, etc. You know, we want to look a little bit like some other towns that have been improved. We want to look a little bit like a tourist attraction. Right now, we're rural, that's what we sell. We have the greatest water in the world, right here. You want it. What are we going to get in return? We need to make a deal with you, and I want to know specifically from our planning board, when we will get a venue before or after the zoning hearing to present our demands, so we can negotiate.
As I said, our current zoning ordinance classifies water extraction in the manufacturing light district. I'm sure there'll be discussions whether that's right or wrong in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But that's the way we're set up, and it's known as a special exception that gets heard by the zoning hearing board. And in order to change that, you'd have to make application or make your request to the Board of Supervisors, and then they would decide whether to change the zoning in accordance with what you want.
Well, let's say it goes through, okay? They're getting something. What are we going to get? What are we going to be able to present our case for these improvements in our community that we should expect of somebody who's getting something valuable from us?
The immediate answer would be, under our current policies, is to be recognized as a, in fact, maybe Michael can hear that. But anyway, to be recognized by the zoning hearing board as a person with standing. And then you present whatever your plan is. And if your plan is elaborate enough to entail this type of presentation, you would certainly be welcome, as long as the zoning hearing board would recognize you, you'd be welcome to give this elaborate of a presentation.
I see. I have another question. Maybe two. Now,
Any more traffic questions?
She's standing over
Let's get rid of the traffic and then we'll go. That's good.
I've been patient. Hold on.
Let me go while you take
Traffic?
Yes, I think so. Are you aware, I know you're not a physician, but are you aware of studies done that suggest that truck exhaust increases asthma?
Yeah, that's right. As a traffic engineer, no, I've done.
So you're not
I've
aware
not
of
done
any that
anything
exist, or?
I have not done. I'm not an expert in that field. No.
Is there one?
I am, and I can
there
tell you, if they idle their trucks, a lot of that exhumed, yes, it can affect people with asthma.
Okay. It came to mind. Who deals with policy here among the Nestle people? And anyway, speak to policy, just general policy. All right.
I may be able to.
All right.
I don't create the policy.
I heard the gentleman say, the hydrologist, that you won't pump in times of drought. Did I hear you correctly?
I believe I indicated that during times of drought, there would be permit conditions that may disallow them from pumping.
Okay. Now.
May.
Yeah, May. Okay. Now, this ties into
California,
the
there's
question of
drought
Nestle
there.
policy. Are you aware, now I've seen this online, the quotation by the CEO in California, his name is Tim Brown, I can't be absolutely sure. He was put to the question was put to him. We've got drought here in California. This was sometime in the recent past. Are you going to stop drilling? His answer was, no, we're going to increase. Now, why are we, I don't want to make anybody squirm, but why are we to trust what you're saying if Nestle's behind this policy? So the next thing I want to know.
Well, can I focus on that question?
Is, okay, thanks.
You asked a question I'd like to answer. I'm not aware of any active exploration activity in California related to our business. That's what you mentioned. We are withdrawing water from spring sites in California as well as from municipal systems to for our products. Yes, there is a drought in California of monumental proportions.
Okay.
Absolutely. We, like many other businesses in California, rely on water sources for our business.
Money.
Why does Nestle need to draw water anywhere?
People buy our products.
Why don't you go home?
Profit.
Are you guys
People buy our products. There's a demand for our products. We are a business like many others. Ours doesn't, you know, for example, the beverage category, there's many types of beverages out there. Bottled water is one. There's sodas, teas. They all have the base ingredient of water.
It's not working.
So, in a drought situation in California, we continue to operate our spring sites in a sustainable manner. We are not causing impacts to anybody's supply of water in California.
Do you allow any independent inspectors from the communities to observe you at any time? No, we trust, but verify.
Absolutely. The regulatory agencies have every right to inspect our facilities at any given moment.
What about people from the communities?
Just anybody come onto the property, we can't allow that obviously for security reasons, but.
Security reasons,
Okay.
yes. But, you know, what if we want to use one of our own independent inspectors with standing or qualifications?
If it's a township hydrogeologist, sure.
Okay, I have one more question. As far as this drilling that you're going to be doing, the depth was, I think, listed as down to 100. Well, how deep is that, the deepest well going to be?
I'm going to turn that question to Lou because I don't recall the details as well as Lou does.
The wells drilled to the site were approximately 200 feet deep.
200 feet?
Yes.
Okay. I asked another geologist how deep one of these commercial wells should be. And he said it's expected that commercial drilling should go down from 500 feet to 1,000 feet. Do you take exception to that?
I take big exception to that. In eastern Pennsylvania, aquifers and their aquifer thicknesses, and there's a report by Lowe et al. That talks about aquifer thicknesses in Pennsylvania. And most of the water that is potable is in the first several hundred feet, 300 feet, 400 feet. And that is usually the target zones for aquifers and fractured rock in eastern Pennsylvania. Now with that, it's also depending on the site geology. I mean, if the sandstone that we're looking at is at 400 feet, we perhaps may drill to 400 feet. The sandstone was at depth of 200 feet, and that was where the aquifer was, and that's where the wells are drilled into.
Well, with the advances in technology, do you gentlemen in that field ever update your information? Or do you rely on things that are information that's 30 and 40 and 20 years old? We're always updating things and finding out there are newer things we didn't think of before.
Yes, we update and we use newer methods all the time.
Well, most of these people here, including myself, probably have a shallow well. That's what you're going to be drilling. In this shallow aquifer, basically. Am I wrong?
What our studies have shown is that the aquifer is mainly on the site. There was some impact to well water levels to the west, and to the north and south there were none. They were in different aquifers.
One more consideration I was asked was which aquifer precisely, and I know it said the Palmerton, something about the Palmerton aquifer, or something like that.
It's a Palmerton
and
sandstone.
Connectivity. Have you done any studies? Are you able to do any studies about connections between this aquifer and, let's say, over the hill where I am?
Yes, in fact, that's in the presentation we showed monitoring wells that showed no connection to the north and to the south.
You're sure about that?
When we do the test, we monitor water levels while pulling out the extraction water. And those wells to the north by the Buckwaw Creek showed no drawdown. The wells to the south showed no drawdown.
Well, for now, I'll take your word for it. Thank you.
Yes, but you're basing that, what you're saying, excuse me.
Hi.
Thank you.
What size tankers do you use?
The tankers for transport,
Yes.
6,500 gallon tankers.
How much water would the tanker hold?
The tanker holds 6,500 gallons.
I worked for a water hauling company for years, and we always ran 6,000 gallons, put us right at the 80,000 limit.
Okay.
So where's the 6,500 coming from?
The tanker's 6,500, and the tractors, what we were talking about earlier, are single cab day cabs, so that keeps us under the 80,000. It
So
would,
none of your tankers are 8,000 gallon tankers though?
none of the tankers that'll run here.
Do you use subcontractors or are they employees of Nestle?
No, I use 3PLs. I have
What?
I have 3 dedicated third-party logistics companies that haul for me.
If they get caught running overweight, who pays the fine?
They pay it, and then it comes to us, but they don't run overweight.
How is it monitored when they're loading? Or you're saying that they only haul, the tanker is a 6,500 gallon tanker?
Yeah, the tanker is a 6,500 gallon tanker. We load it full. That's, if you were in the business, you know the safest way to travel is completely full.
Yes.
Who weighs it?
It's off the pump.
Who?
It comes off the pump at 6,500 gallons.
So you guys don't go into any station to get weighed?
No, there's no.
Maybe I can address that question on weighing. We don't weigh it each time that we load it. We load the truck, we take it to a weigh station. We know what that truck and tanker combination is, and we ensure that it's less than 80,000 pounds.
Are you taking questions from other stuff too? I do have one other.
I'll only answer traffic.
Yeah, I know you're traffic, but,
If there's other.
okay. Artist has a traffic.
I have a traffic. When you did your traffic study,
Yes.
what time of year was that?
We did the data collection after our scoping meeting with PennDOT. It was in November.
It was in November.
November 12th and 14th were the 2 days we counted the intersection turning movements, and then that week we counted 24 hours a day for 7 days a week, and that data is in the report.
In those side areas? Nowhere else along Silver Spring Boulevard except in those side areas?
No, and that's why we have the scoping meeting with PennDOT and the township to determine exactly what we feel we should study based on what PennDOT's going to require for their roads and the township's engineer is going to require.
Okay, and when PennDOT, they approved this, this was based on your length of your trucks?
The study was approved based on the meeting that we had. As far as the length of the trucks and the weight of the trucks, that's regulated for
That's
any
regulated.
trucker.
Oh,
Correct.
that's right. For any truck on the
Yes,
on
if
the
they,
state highway.
if Nestle or any other operator wanted to run a vehicle over 80,000 pounds, which they do, that's an overweight vehicle, you need a special hauling permit for that. But we're not proposing any of that.
Okay. And a question, what if it's icy in the winter? How do your trucks run on that? What determines that? Whether weight or hold them down on the road? Okay, let's say,
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
how does weather
Oh,
affect transportation?
operation.
Yeah,
for these trucks?
that's my world. We'll shut it down. So what we'll do is we'll get our silos at our factories loaded, and we'll run Nestle Pure Life for a couple days while we can get a fill of spring water. Because you know a storm's coming. Like, I'll give you the 30-inch storm we just had. A couple days prior to that, I just get the silos at my site down in Allentown full, and then I'll shut my trucks down until the roads are clear again.
Okay, so then, till the roads are clear and they can get here and pump water?
Yep. And if for some reason either your township or your state or somebody decides not to plow and salt your roads, then I won't come until it's safe for my guys to operate.
And someone out of Nestle's at the home, the bottling plant, or Nestle? Who? Because you're not gonna be in Kunkletown watching the weather. Is there someone at dispatch somewhere saying Silver Springs Boulevard has not been plowed yet? Don't go there?
Yeah, the dispatcher and the driver will make that decision. So if the driver gets on a situation where it's not safe, his instructions are to shut down until it's safe. So we'll leave a truck instead of trying to keep plowing through. It's not safe and it's not intelligent.
Okay, that's all.
Excuse me, sir, one question.
Sorry.
A traffic question.
I have a traffic question. All right. In your data research, you refer to ADT or volume of traffic.
Yes.
Have you ever been asked to do a survey strictly for truck traffic?
Yes, one of the things we did in our count is we do classification counts. So the counts are broken up by vehicle class of motorcycle, car, truck, and so on. And that's in the report. Yeah, the hard data is in there. Okay. Yep. And PennDOT also reports on what percentage of the ADT is truck traffic based on their own counts that they do.
All right,
I have
one
a
more.
question. Hi, I'm a resident. You studied Silver Spring Boulevard. I wondered, did you study where the intersection of Boulevard Road and Green Creek Road is across Silver Spring Road?
We did not, no.
I use that a lot. And when I'm heading west and I come to that stop street at Silver Spring Road, when I look to the left, there's a curve. When I look to the right, there's a hill. You can't see more than 50, 60 feet either way. I'm not going to use that intersection no more if them trucks are going up and down that road. And if I feel like this about one of your studies, what about all them other studies? Is there little loopholes like this that I might not know until later? And then it's too late because I know how Nestle is once they get in there, you can get them out.
I'm not sure what the
I
loophole.
mean, I know.
Go ahead.
All right, it's a state road, it's legal, you can use it. But I just wonder if you studied that one intersection. That's just one of them. I know you're not from around here, you don't understand the roads.
Well, we have a meeting with PennDOT and the township's engineer to determine what we study. That's why we have a scoping meeting, and that's how we determine what intersections to
It
study.
sounds like you don't care.
No, it's not that I don't care. That's why we had the meeting, so that we can hear from professionals from the township on what we should look at, and that's what we did.
Excuse me, you're not getting Polk Township involved.
I feel like somebody's pissing on my back telling me it's raining.
Excuse me, I just want to. They would like to know what your name is, sir.
Guy Hyde.
I have a question.
One thing to add on to him, this intersection he's talking about needs to be studied. Green Schweik and Borger or Silver Spring, you cannot see. You cannot see. Now this gentleman just, I live there. This gentleman just said he's not going to use that intersection. So guess where all the people are going to go? Into Kingswood Lake, which is a private community. We have a problem now with people coming through because they don't want to use that intersection. There's so many accidents that come through our association. So there's a major problem right there with traffic.
Excuse me. Sir.
I'm sorry.
With regard to
Why don't we
this last
listen to some
gentleman,
other people in regards to, we can open this up now to general questions?
with regard to this gentleman and the traffic impact study, tell me why, of course, you gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, are going to rely on your observations at whatever time you get there, or whatever you think the team to be in the condition of roads. But what about the experiences of all of these ladies and gentlemen who use these roads every day? Are you going to give them 90%, as well you should, of weight in your consideration? You should. Think about that. I'd like an answer from someone about the traffic from that point of view.
I have a question.
I'm waiting for an answer.
From Epsilon Associates, and I'm going to try to make some quick remarks here. I know it's getting late. I'm the sound guy, so we did just real quickly. I'm a board certified noise control engineer. Work for Epsilon Associates. We were retained by Nestle to do a sound level impact study. That's contained in the EIS the town has, Exhibit F. F as in Frank. So a sound level study consists really of four different parts. Part one is to measure the existing sound levels in the community today, find out what they are. Step two go to a comparable water extraction facility or whatever the source being proposed is, in this case a water extraction facility. Understand what the sound levels are there, what generates sound, measure that there. Step 3 is to bring that information back to the community of interest, Eldred Township in this case, and model that out here. And number 4 is take that information compared to what your township regulations are, what are the sound level limits here in town, as well as compare it to the existing sound levels for informational purposes. So the first step was to measure sound levels here in town. The map up here, again, the site is here on the right-hand side of Chestnut Ridge. This is Kunkletown Road going across the top of the figure. We measured at 3 different locations in town. One here along Chestnut Ridge, representing the houses closest to the site to the south. We also measured right up here outside the fire station to represent homes along Kunkletown Road. And we also measured a 3rd location over here near the property line of the site to represent what might be the backyards of some of those homes up along Kunkletown Road. We measured out here for about 2 weeks in November of 2015, collected about over 300 hours of sound levels continuously 24 hours a day at those 3 locations. Sound levels, as you might expect, vary over the course of the day and the night. They were generally in the 40s to the 60s, hour by hour, with many short-term spikes, if you will, for brief periods of time when cars and trucks would go up and down the roads. And those type of sound levels would typically be between 60, 70, up to 80 decibels whenever a vehicle goes by. Second step was to go up to an existing water extraction facility that Nestle has. There's one over in Lehigh County called Hoffman Springs. So we went to that facility, measured sound levels up there for a day, and understood what generates the sound levels. And in terms of steady sound levels at a site like this, there really isn't any. They have the ground level water extraction pumps. They're electrically powered. They're very quiet. They're installed inside of a good, well-built building, so there's really no sound from those at all. There is a little bit of sound from the trucks arriving and departing. The 3rd step was to take that information, bring it back here to Eldred Township. Make sure I get the right button here. So this figure is very similar to the one I just showed you, only it overlays some of our modeling locations, and you can see from this the site loop in here. The actual pumping and loading facility is right over here. Again, that does not make any sound. What we measured over in Hoffman Springs was silent. There's no sound from it. Using that information, we modeled at the nearest homes to the north, nearest property lines, as well as the nearest homes to the south along Chestnut Ridge. There's a lot of information in the report, a lot of numbers. I'll just try to summarize quickly at a high level. The township regulations are easily met by any of the pumping operations because they're silent. Truck activities, or actually any vehicle operations in the town of Eldred, are excluded from the township regulations. Township regulations do not look at sound from any vehicles, any motor vehicle, period. However, we knew people might be interested in it, so we looked at it anyway, whether it was the trucks driving in the driveways, parking, starting up, leaving the site. And again, those sound levels are similar to or less than sound levels that are measured out there on the roads today. So I'll try to wrap up here. In summary, the sound levels for this type of operation really are not an issue. There's no overnight truck filling from 11 to 6 a.m. There's no activity period. Trucks are not allowed to idle per state rule and company policy. The wells and the pumps are underground. They're electrically driven. And finally, there's going to be a well-constructed building housing all that activity. So the project will easily meet the township noise regulations. With that, I will stop.
Can I?
There's
Okay.
a line. Yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead. There we go.
Thank you.
My question, Lori Zilmer, my question to you is with the studies that you have done, and I have to ask why you picked the month of November. Because if any of you all were here in the month of November, it can't get any slower. Okay? That's why you did it? Is that why you did it? Because it's calm? Why didn't you do it in the summertime? Kids are not at school, they are at home. You got traffic. The buses, they're not running when you probably did the study. So you've got a ton of cars with the kids. You've got probably more moms at home, moms and dads at home, more cars. And the bicyclists. Let's talk about the bicyclists. I mean, this is a place where there's a ton of bicyclists around here. So why did you not do the study, or why didn't you not do more than one study? Why didn't you do a quarterly study? Why didn't you do one in midsummer?
Talking about noise or traffic?
All of it, the 2 studies. Because it's quiet here. It's quiet, and the traffic is not that much here in the month of November. Come around summertime. It's a different place here in the summertime.
Well, yeah, for the traffic, we did it following our scoping meeting that we had with PennDOT, which happened to fall into November. But we also do look at historical data. PennDOT counts their roads, so they have data that's available online on their PennDOT ITMS data webpage, where they count traffic volumes and they adjust for seasonal variations such as that. From our standpoint, the volumes of traffic on these roadways are extremely low. We don't generally see levels of service A's at intersections, especially at a stop condition. Generally, you're going to wait more than 10 seconds at a stop sign. So even if we adjusted for the volumes, and even if we honestly doubled the volumes, which wouldn't be realistic, it would be.
You can say that maybe here, but not on Silver Spring Road. And
Silver
turning out
Spring
at 209.
at 209.
Yeah, that's going to be a whole different.
Yeah, that was
ballgame.
not one of the intersections that we studied.
There's no way your truck will be able to turn on 209. You are not involving the Polk Township. That belongs to Polk
Can I answer
Township.
your question from a sound perspective?
Okay.
So the numbers that we calculate and model are independent of the time of the season. In other words, what we estimate from the operation of the facility don't matter what time of year it is. The background measurements we took in November are really for informational purposes to understand how loud it is. And if I understand what you're saying, then if there's actually more traffic during the summer,
Correct.
then the existing condition sound levels without the facility would be somewhat higher.
Correct. But you don't know that because you didn't do the study.
No.
What he's saying is if they did it during a peak time of noise, that would be worse for Eldred Township because the average noise would be higher.
And it wouldn't affect them.
And it wouldn't affect them as much, where if you do it at a quiet time, they're the only noise there is.
Okay.
Right, it's kind of a conservative analysis in that sense.
Okay. All right. That being said, let's go back to the study on traffic. How could that possibly be? I know that is one of the worst intersections of trying to get out on 209, and they're not a study. I'm in a car.
I guess we're gonna get traffic lights. What's happening?
How is that possible that you guys did not do
We
a
had a
study?
meeting with PennDOT for their roads
PennDOT
on what we
doesn't
need to
know.
study. They certainly do know their roads.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
And we determined what intersections to study. Based on this development, a study would not even be required by PennDOT. They have criteria of volumes of traffic that you add to their roadways. There's there's traffic on every roadway. If we add a certain number of vehicles, they say that will be enough of an impact. You have to study that impact. We're below those thresholds, and that's a state law.
You don't live here. You don't drive.
They're not from here. They don't care
They're
about
not
us.
from here.
They don't care about us. They're not from
People
here.
don't live around here.
Exactly.
There are huge vacation complexes up 534. The traffic increases 5 times in the summertime as opposed to the winter time, and you cannot make a left at that stop sign. Now, am I wrong?
And again, what you need to do, familiar with that area, West End Physical Therapy, West End Physical Therapy, they may be a objector that would be heard at the zoning hearing board.
They don't have the
Look,
knowledge of
his
going on.
trucks aren't going to be able to leave Kunkletown. That's what I'm saying. It's going to impact your business, your dollar efficiency also. You cannot make a left in the summertime at that stop sign.
Can't even
It's
make a
time
left
you
in the
face
winter.
the truth.
I got a question about the sound.
Yes, sir.
All right. You said that you did studies for the sound test. I thought that our supervisors voted on you guys not putting your sound meters up. You guys, Eric Andrews said that he wanted to put one up at the firehouse, one up at the community center, and they voted not that no, you couldn't put them up. So how did you get readings if you weren't allowed to put meters up?
Well, you're correct. We were not allowed to put one up at the community center, so we did not. Two of the three are on the leased property for the project, so that was obviously not an issue.
Of course, it's not going to bother him. He's getting money. Why would it bother him?
And one was at the fire station, and we were allowed to put one there.
Well, they voted that you weren't allowed to put it here. So where did that vote come from?
They didn't need one.
Good question, Doug. The township did not allow us to put a sound level meter at the community center.
So you put it on the.
Well, I was there that night.
I asked for permission from the fire company to put a sound level meter here, and they allowed me.
Well, is that before or after you bought the defibrillators for the company?
Doug, there has been no defibrillators bought for the Kunkletown Fire Company.
Company is telling it came from you guys, so.
I encourage you to ask the fire company if we purchased them any defibrillators.
Sorry, Sullivan isn't here tonight again, so.
I'm sorry, Doug? I didn't.
Sullivan isn't here again tonight, so.
I spoke to Sullivan earlier this week and asked him the same question. Did somebody donate 3 defibrillators to the fire company? He said absolutely not.
Where did they come from?
He's the one who spouted off that they came from you guys. It came from his mouth like that. And then I have one other question about your hydrologist guy. I sat here a whole night listening to this and seeing your pictures that I think I remember that first picture in like 3rd grade or something like that. The recharging, when they're about the recharging, with 50 inches a year or something like that. I asked this once before and I didn't get no answer. So when you figure for your recharging at 50 inches a year and what you guys are extracting more than what the recharging rate is. How does that work? So yeah, you only want a 20-year contract because in 20 years it's going to be dried up.
I disagree with that. We've been through the presentation. The permitting levels are, the water that is extractable is sustainable. We cannot pull more water than is recharged.
How do you get your numbers? Because how my calculator adds up, I mean, you're adding numbers for the whole Eldred Township. You're not pulling water from all of Eldred Township. You're pulling from 80 acres. So when you do your recharging rate for your 80 acres, because that's what you have leased, the numbers don't add up.
We discussed that already, the recharge and the water rights use. The recharge is based upon the extent of the aquifer, and we have that in there. We have how much it rains and how much of that rainfall recharges into the aquifer. It ultimately comes out, and the stream is the base flow measurements where we have the stream gauges, and it's based upon that. So the recharge isn't a guess; it's basically it's a gauged number based on the stream. So that is what they will regulate it on, and then we take that number again, which we did the testing in a dry time. We then projected it into a drought time.
You never saw a dry time in our town. I'm sorry, sir.
So I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen some pretty dry periods. So.
I lived here for 47 years, so I did see some dry time.
And the drought, it will be conditions in the permit. If there is, when we go through the permitting is based upon drought conditions. So some of the conditions that you talk about that they would have restrictions on the pulling of the water. If you had extreme conditions where the Buckwaw Creek was not running there would be very highly unlikely that Nestle would be pulling water from the site. There's going to be pass-by requirements on the flow. It's going to be based upon the recharge. We've already based the recharge on drought numbers, and those drought numbers also have drought mitigations above them. So if those droughts occur, which are highly unlikely for that to affect, because we're already permitting the levels based upon drought levels.
Mr. Vittorio, while you're up, I do have a question for the sound gentleman. I'm sorry, this is your, but no, right now, Mr. Vittorio, while you're up. At last month's meeting, planning commission meeting, I asked you, or I intended to ask you, when Earthres was first involved on this site. And your response was that it was about, I believe it was about May of 2015. Mr. Anderson said there was some water quality and flow testing going on prior to that time. I may not have asked the right question or gotten the right answer, because in the notes it looks like Earthres was involved in about 2012. There was a woman writing some letters from Earthres. And my question is, now that I understand Earthres has had a relationship with Nestle going back, almost 20 years, would you have had a new contract in 2012 when that woman wrote that letter, or as your ongoing relationship, could Nestle just have asked her to write that letter?
You have many questions there. So let me. To the other meeting, I believe, when we talked about May of 2015, that was the time that we began the drilling at the site. I think we were talking about the drilling of the wells at that time. So in May of 2015 is when the intrusive investigation of the well drilling occurred. We have been involved in the site certainly since 2012 in collecting the monitoring data. Yes.
And my brief question that related to that is, would that have been a new contract for Earthres, or would what was done in 2012 just been, since you have an ongoing relationship, it just gets billed to, whatever?
A lot of the work with Nestle, we provide proposals, and they look at competitive bids between companies. So we have ongoing proposals that.
It would have been a new contract, essentially.
I guess I don't understand the question. We do work for Nestle.
It was done in 2012. It's not like they just would have called them up and said, "Bill this. To do this work, bill it." My understanding from you just said there would be a bidding process.
I'm not sure if everything is bidded, but we do write proposals for the work that has to be done, and they get approved, and then we do the work.
Thank you. And then for the sound gentleman, I saw your test points. I was actually unaware that you were refused to test at certain points. But I have questions related to a gentleman in the room that asked a question or expressed some concerns. In January, if I were living along one of the roads that these trucks were passing by at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, even if it was 55 dB or 65 dBA, that would bother me. And I know that decibel levels are not regulated with vehicles by the state, by our ordinance. But since this is a special exception, restrictions can be placed on the applicant for operating hours based on things like people being annoyed by trucks. And this is actually turning into a comment rather than a question. And I didn't intend that, and I apologize. I'll make that quick comment and sit down, and that is a suggestion to the planners that they restrict truck traffic after 9 o'clock and maybe on Sundays. In my town, we had an operation that ran from morning till night, and I can tell you, I lived a half mile away, and I would look at that clock, and they ended at 10 every night. And it was a blessing when they shut down, and one day a week off was barely enough to recover. And I would just make that suggestion to the planners to try to restrict the truck traffic somewhat. Thank you.
We did have a special section on Tuesday night, and that was part of as planners, we call it a work session, kind of like a workshop, and part of that discussion, part of the minutes will reflect that we're recommending to the zoning hearing board that the times be less, and I believe no traffic on Sunday.
Or Saturday.
Megan.
Take the weekend off.
Hi, I was wondering, does your company do sound studies related to livestock?
Livestock. What do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean.
Animals.
I understand what livestock are.
Okay, well, I can
But
introduce
specifically.
myself if you'd like. My name is Megan LeBlond. I own a 20-acre farm that I attempt to run sustainably. I raise Caturnix quail. Coturnix quail are affected by sound. They don't lay when there are high sound levels. Your company does not provide any studies related to sound levels in livestock?
We have not studied that, no.
Even though it's a farming community here?
I've been to 30 meetings about this. I've probably placed 30 phone calls, and it breaks my heart that we're here today dealing with this issue, because there's no reason why we can't see through this. And the fact that pockets are being lined while you export our precious life-giving resource is unreal to me. I don't understand how you can participate with this kind of an action. To me, it's a raping of the earth for personal private profit, and it breaks my heart to see each and every one of you up here doing this to your communities, to the earth. It breaks my heart. The Coturnix quail, which will be affected by sound, it's not me because I'm not on Silver Springs, but if anybody wanted to raise Coturnix quail, which is one of the most sustainable animals that there is, the egg can incubate in 17 days, and it can start laying within 5 to 6 weeks, which a chicken can start laying in 6 months to a year. So it's actually referenced in the Bible that that the quail was put on the earth to sustain man. And if the quail can't lay, how could it possibly sustain us in that amount of time? There are incredible health benefits to the quail egg, and I'm concerned about how you're infringing on any one of my fellow man's ability to be able to raise that quail. I'm concerned about that. If you're a sound expert, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
By the way, an expert has documentation that the water trucks in the fracking area killed the ladies' alpacas. They all died from the stress, and it's documented, and it's an expert I'm trying to get here. It is documented. First of all, her foundation came off. Honest to God, this is true. Her foundation came off from so many of the water trucks going by where they're fracking, and all of her alpacas died. Every one of them had like heart attacks that they just couldn't take. The constantness, that's not what I'm up here for, but it reminds me of that. The constant of continuous truck traffic, the animals could not endure it. That is documented, and I have an expert that can bring that case here. And that's the truth. But anyway, so answer the question.
I have one question for the sound. I guess it's not so much sound, but when trucks drive by, the sound does bother me immensely. I have a very sensitive, I'm a musician, I don't know what your background is, but it's not so much the sound as the vibration. My house shakes, and I've had actually artwork fall off my walls. There's been damage done because my house shakes. If you've lived in this community and you know about a lot of the housing, some of it, like the place I live is, it's a cabin, let's be honest. Have there been any studies about the vibrational movement of trucks versus the sound? Because the sound doesn't bother me as much as my windows shaking and stuff of that nature.
I mean, vibration is certainly a location-specific type phenomena. It's going to depend how close you are. In this case, it's roadway ground-borne induced vibration that could be possible from any truck driving by, whether it's a Nestle truck or...
Was there any studies done on this?
No.
Okay, just checking.
One more question.
I don't know who to ask this question to, but one last thing. On Fresh Air a couple weeks ago, a man who has an office in Penargil was on Fresh Air, and he was saying that when those trucks go by, they shake his office, his whole entire office shakes. That is horrible, and it goes on. He's from Allentown, but he works there, and it goes on all day long. So this is definitely a known fact about trucks, but that's not my question. I don't know who I'm supposed to.
Just read it.
Okay. In your application, it's clear that Nestle was evaluating and performing tests on the Gower property in 2012. Was Nestle aware that at this time water extraction was not a permitted use? Yes or no?
I know they're ready for this one right now.
Yes or no?
It's not a simple yes or no answer.
Well,
You gotta answer it.
I will be glad to give you the answer though.
no, it has to be yes or no.
No, it does not.
Yes, it does. I want it to
When
be
we
yes.
began monitoring,
That's a question.
when we-
You knew or you didn't know? You knew
When we-
or you didn't know?
Answer the question.
we,
Answer the question.
I am trying to.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. When we began monitoring the springs, we absolutely reviewed the Eldred Township zoning ordinance.
What year?
2012-ish. Don't quote me on
12-ish,
the
the whole year? You don't have a date.
I don't have an exact date for you. I apologize.
Not, you don't even know the, do you know the year?
We did review the zoning ordinance. We did recognize that water extraction was defined as manufacturing. We also further read the zoning ordinance and noticed that manufacturing light is a permitted use in the commercial zoning district. However, the zoning ordinance does not define manufacturing light. We felt manufacturing light is a subset of manufacturing, and logic would tell you that manufacturing light would be a light manufacturing type business. Water extraction does not involve any manufacturing processes. So our interpretation of the zoning ordinance at that time was that water extraction could be considered manufacturing light and therefore allowed in the commercial zoning district. And as a result of that interpretation, we continued monitoring the springs.
But it wasn't allowed at the time. No matter what no matter what you say, it was not allowed at the time.
I'm explaining
I told you, did some supervisor here in this room tell you that they would help you and they would work on it and they...
Absolutely not.
Well, then why would you continue to spend money?
Because I just explained, we felt that ground or water extraction could be considered manufacturing light and therefore allowed. Excuse me?
So they went and changed the ordinance without ever talking to Nestle. So Ricky Gower, Sharon, and whoever else was involved, they never got together before you changed the ordinance and said, hey, don't worry, we're going to change the ordinance for you, and you just go and keep on working. So you just kept on working without ever talking to a supervisor or anybody. And never finding out how the community felt. I go door to door in this community. I go door to door in this community. 98% of the people are against it. Megan, Joyce, and I have spent 40 to 50 hours of our life going door to door in this community. 2% of the people who are for it, I don't know, they're either related to Ricky Gower or Sharon or somebody, but most of the people in this community are dead set against it. Why didn't you find that out before you decided to extract your water? Why didn't you find out how the community felt? Because we are all against it. 98%, I will go to my grave knowing that.
Desiree, I appreciate your
This
passion.
might put me in my grave earlier, actually. It probably will.
I hope not. I appreciate your passion, Desiree.
No, this is not passion, this is fact.
I want you to know, when we begin monitoring various spring sites, we monitor a lot of spring sites. Most of them are determined not to be feasible for development. So we continued monitoring the spring, knowing that there's a very good chance that it would not move on to the next stage. So typically in those situations, we do not go and start talking with the community because it's most likely it's not going to move to a permitting phase. That's why we did not start having those conversations in 2012.
When you supervisors would do it. Go ahead.
When you read the zoning enough to see if you could do it, and you explained, what, did you get clarification though? That yes, we can, or no, we can't, or it's just, you even said, well, it sort of sounds like we can.
Right.
Did you get clarification?
We did not at that time figured we would monitor to see if it would even be a site that we would consider developing. And at that point in time, if we wanted to move to the next phase,
But if you didn't get the
then we would go ask the question.
Why even check the zoning? If it doesn't matter, why did you even bother checking the zoning?
Well, we felt that there was an interpretation that water extraction could be considered manufacturing light. Because there's no definition.
Why didn't you get clarification?
Donna, please let me try to answer the question.
Okay.
Our interpretation was that water extraction could be considered manufacturing light. It was somewhat of a subjective decision.
Shady.
No, not shady.
Okay.
So we continued to monitor springs, figuring that if we wanted to move to the next phase, we would then make an argument that it should be considered manufacturing light and therefore allowed in the commercial zoning district. If we were told that the township did not agree with that interpretation, then we would not proceed.
Where was the permit?
But we didn't. I mean, with the pending lawsuit, why are you still here?
Yes.
Why are you disrespecting us?
Because the current zoning ordinance defines water extraction as manufacturing light, which is
But that
allowed
all goes back to the pending lawsuit.
I understand.
So you don't feel that any change was required? If there wasn't a change for the 2014 ordinance, you would have still been okay?
We feel that no change was necessarily required to the zoning ordinance. However, there was a new draft zoning ordinance proposed whenever it was proposed and eventually enacted in 2014. We noticed in early 2014, we saw a newspaper advertisement about the new zoning ordinance. We reviewed it.
Yeah, you're the only one who did, because none of us saw it. None of us saw it, not one person in this room.
We then went and reviewed the draft zoning ordinance, which showed that the language associated with water extraction was being changed to industry. We recognized that if it was changed to industry, then it would clearly not be allowed in the commercial zoning district. I had a conversation with the property owner, because we had no agreements with the property owner at that time other than basic access.
No, 20 days later you did. 20 days after the ordinance, you had an
And
agreement.
Mr. Gower sought out his attorney to pursue a change in the zoning ordinance, which he did.
So Mr. Harris, I'll pick up since she sat down with that line of questioning. And that is, are you saying that you were not aware that you were not permitted?
No, I'm not saying that.
When you saw that advertisement with the industry, with the new language.
With the new language.
At that point in time, my question is, you still weren't aware that you were really not permitted at that time?
And they had no permit.
Excuse me.
Well, the draft zoning ordinance wasn't obviously in effect. I'm not sure I understand the
I'm
question.
asking when you first realized that you were really not permitted. Was it only after the discussion surrounding that amendment?
Again, I'm not sure I completely understand the question, Don.
It's pretty simple. You were assuming that you might be permitted.
Right, correct.
But at some point, did you become aware that you were really not permitted?
No, because we did not have a conversation with the township to see how they might rule on that.
So then I believe is the answer that you first found out that you were not permitted under the existing ordinance after the fallout in 2015, when it was discovered this change had been made and you were actually permitted. At some point, you found out that you were really not permitted under the 2004 ordinance that was in effect.
I do not agree with that.
Sir, there's a piece you're missing. Under the municipality's planning code, there's a provision that says that zoning ordinances have to be interpreted in the manner most favorable to the landowner. In this case, your 2004 ordinance read with manufacturing, no definition of manufacturing light. What Mr. Andrews said about it being a subset is exactly how it reads.
Okay, let me tell you what you're missing, sir, respectfully. You know what it would have taken for them to figure out that they were not a permitted use? It'd take me less than 2 minutes to explain it. They would have gone to the ordinance, which was online at that time. You can still find it if you know how to. The 2004 ordinance is still on the server of Eldred Township. It's not linked to, but it's there. You would have looked up and found water extraction is defined, /bottling. It's defined as manufacturing, as Mr. Andrews said. Then what you would have done is you would have gone to the use table, schedule of use tables for the commercial district and the industrial district. And as Mr. Andrews said, in the commercial district, which was what they were looking at, you saw manufacturing light. And as he also said, it's not defined anywhere. Now, if you go to the industrial use table, you would have found, under special exceptions, manufacturing and industry. And that's how even a moron could have figured out that manufacturing, which water extraction was defined as, was permitted in the industrial district. And if you went back, because you thought you might have missed something, and you went back here, and you say, oh, in the commercial district, and you scoured this, nowhere here would you find manufacturing.
No,
Standalone.
manufacturing light
Subsets.
is allowed, which is a subset of manufacturing, sir.
Why did they know
That's
that was the last
bullshit.
second? Then why did you have to scratch it out and put manufacturing light at the last second?
And then what you would have done, and you damn well
That's
know this,
bullshit.
is you would have gone to your zoning officer and asked him for an interpretation.
Exactly.
And tell me that.
And you wait for corruption to take over.
Yeah, that's right. Someday, the truth is gonna really come out about what happened in this township, and it's gonna be on a Lifetime movie.
I am ready, I'm already Sweeney, and I'm ready to hear about all the benefits that Nestle is going to bring to our communities.
None.
They keep talking about the benefits as communities. I want to hear it all, because I've heard it.
Our house values, we will not be able to sell our houses. It's gonna have to be disclosed that Nestle is here. Everybody better know that. We will not be able to sell our houses. In 20 years from now, we'll be renting them out to a bunch of druggies. This whole neighborhood will be destroyed, and that's a fact. And if those people come in here, we will sink, now what 9-year-old doesn't know who's gonna buy your house? When half a mile away, Nestle's is sucking their well water. Who will buy our houses? Tell me that, Nestle.
And now
who is going to buy our houses on my farm?
Literally, you will not
No,
be
I'm
here.
damn right.
You're going to have an empty building with a computer, pumping water oil.
Yep.
Only thing we get
Thanks,
is a
Sharon.
bunch of
Thanks a
big
lot.
ass trucks.
All right. And you guys are from Switzerland.
The purpose of, Eric is willing to address that, but the purpose of this meeting is to hopefully ask some constructive questions. You've made some good points. The Planning Commission has numerous times referenced the procedures of which this took place and our displeasure with those procedures, and we've taken appropriate action. So, the question was asked about benefits. Mary Ann.
They didn't answer the question about benefits, no?
It's been cut off for time.
Yeah, I need my
Before we call on someone else, could we go back to her and let her ask her
can.
question? Thank you.
Did you pay her, Patrice? Yeah. Okay, sure. All right. We will hear what the benefits of this procedures
The
are.
benefits against the negatives, so this is important to hear what are the benefits of the project to the community.
There isn't any.
I appreciate that question. With a project like this, we do not provide any jobs in the local community.
Boo.
We recognize that is undesirable. You know, we would like to be able to provide jobs, but this type of project does not bring jobs to the community. We are growing at our facility in Browningsville, but it would not provide jobs in Eldred Township. I understand that. So,
And the benefits
since
are?
we cannot provide that benefit of employment, we look for other ways that we can provide benefit to the community. And that's why I had a lot of conversations with many people in the community about what could Nestle Waters do if we came to the community to help benefit the community. And I didn't hear any consistent answers, so we decided maybe a community benefit fund would be an appropriate action to take. So we proposed to establish a community benefit fund and deposit up to $750,000 in that community benefit fund that then could be allocated by the members of the community for projects that they felt would be beneficial in the community. In addition to that, that would be upfront when we were permitted and constructed and ready to go. We would also make annual contributions to various organizations in the community as well.
That's a real
Right.
slap in the face. 750,000 is a slap in the face.
You ruin the county, you ruin the township, and you will ruin the school district.
Oil properties, what does that mean?
Are you happy about
I would
that?
like, if I can continue my answer. We've operated several spring sites in eastern Pennsylvania for 20 years. Early on in that process, we had similar concerns expressed by the various communities we were operating in. And over time, we've lived up to the commitments that we established with those communities. We've built trust with those communities. And we are a good neighbor in those communities, and I would intend to do the same thing here in Eldred Township.
Well, then stay in those communities.
Yeah, go build there. Please go build there.
I had asked a question previously to your water quality analyst in terms of your projected or estimated data, which was construed in some way to show the recharge rate that would keep the Aquifer at minimum standard, I guess, is the best way to flow. And I had asked what you could show that would provide substance to that assertion, because it's completely invalid if in fact the Buckwa had run completely dry as it did in 1972. And I wasn't given an answer, so I think we need one in this forum.
Sure, thank you for the question. In looking at our analysis, we looked at gauge data at the Aquifer Creek back to 1940, and that data is used to look at the sustainability of the streams. And to look at that, there's also, we now have gauging on our site to gauge that during a drought. I'm not aware of the stream going dry in 1974, but I did not live there. But I can certainly look at the gauge data and see
I was specifically referring to the Buckwa. You had referenced the Aquifer, which...
Yeah, it's the Buckwa is a subset of the, it's a sub-basin of the Aquifer Creek. And it's about, I think I said it's about a quarter of the size. But the gauge data from the Aquifer we look at over the period of record, and we will look at it at this site too from the monitoring that's established. If there's a condition where the Buckwa Creek runs dry, I mean, that would be a severe drought. And there would, well, if it does again, there was, again, the permitting is based upon the sustainability of the site. If that were to happen again, permit conditions would kick in that would severely restrict the flow or the ability to pull water from the site. We have, again, we'll have pass-by requirements to the stream. You'll have to maintain a certain amount of flow to the stream. And that's based upon the flow in the stream. If the stream's not flowing, they're going to want the site to maintain that flow to the stream.
Obviously, and I thank you.
And if the streams were dry, they could not meet their pass-by requirement, and they could not pump the water if the streams were dry.
But my question, or I guess maybe just my opinion, is that really kind of makes your analysis not substantial then, right?
No, I disagree. So the permitting levels go again, to your point, if there's an extreme drought and the streams go dry, then we couldn't even do our pass-by from the unnamed tributary, because that would be, if the Buckwa Creek's dry, the unnamed tributary is probably going to be dry. And therefore, if that's dry, the withdrawals would not be allowed based upon not meeting our pass-by.
I understand that's an exceptional situation, just like a 100-year storm or flood or drought or anything like that. But again, you know, it's a concern. It's a concern for all of us. It is a concern. So everyone's been told that can't happen, this can't happen, our analysis shows this, our data concludes that, but yet anything can happen.
In that case, it happens. There's conditions in the permit that would restrict the pumping severely if the streams went dry. Again, we did it in a dry time. We then projected it out to a 1 in 25 year dry time. This fall, we did it in the fall.
20% is not considered a dry time. I beg to differ.
We've been in the area. This was a very dry fall for a lot of the falls, and it was a dry fall.
And really, USGS, ENS, Conservation District would beg to differ with you as well.
We monitor many sites. It was a very dry fall. So we did the testing. We didn't do it in a wet time. We did it in a dry time. The drier the time, and typically the regulatory agencies want us to do it in the fall, before the leaves come off the tree. When it is
but the leaves were off in November, so
it was a very extended fall, and at that time the water levels weren't rising. Usually when the leaves come off the trees, the water levels rise, and the water levels were lower in the fall because of the lack of rainfall. So doing testing in a dry time, then we then project the withdrawal to a 180-day withdrawal with no rain, which is an extreme condition, and then we take that and we look at it at a 25-year drought to see if it's sustainable in a 25-year drought. And then on top of that, there'll be a pass-by requirement that is on the permit, and on top of that, there will be a drought mitigation plan in case an extreme condition like that would happen. Again,
and the other side of all of this mitigation implementation is done by whom?
It would be in permit conditions in the DEP permit and also the Department of Environmental Protection, also the Delaware River Basin Commission will be permit conditions.
And no other outside authority has any type of implementation activity other than those two?
RNC.
Those are the primary agencies. I mean, they'll be monitoring data that the applicant will be, that Nestle will be collecting, that'll be available for other people to look at. And they could certainly look at that data and bring that to the attentions of the agencies, and I'm sure the agencies would not fall on deaf ears.
Okay, well, I'm glad. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Don't go away just yet. I have a question for the hydrogeologist. Hi. Actually two. First question is with regards to the sustainability numbers for this 1 in 25 year drought that you guys base some of these extraction numbers on. Is that the most conservative number that's available, or is there 1 in 50 year, 1 in 100 year type numbers that are even more conservative than that? My concern would be that given that the potential length of term for the lease period could be up to 45 years, that a longer period of time where even a potentially more extreme drought condition would need to be looked at. That's the first question.
Can I answer that first?
Yeah. Yep, go ahead.
So thank you for that. So the 1 in 25 year drought is a regulatory through the Delaware River Basin Commission that we look at that as what would be sustainable in 1 in 25 year drought. For more severe droughts, I think I just explained some of the other safeguards that would be in the permit with the pass-by requirements and also site monitoring data to look at that. So if there's a more extreme drought, certainly it would impact site operations in that, from those regards.
Okay, but when you're doing your initial, I guess, submission information here, though, and it's basing it on a recharge number, which is, say, what, or allowable, like 200,000 gallons average, is it coming off of that, say, drought number on that 1 in 25 year? Because if it was something more extreme over a longer period of time, then that would reduce that number, correct?
If it was, again, it's on a 1 in 25 year drought and the cycle's sustainable. So we're in a 1 in 25 year drought. It was indicated to be 525,000 gallons would be the drought amount taken. So what we're looking at is below that, is 200,000 gallons. So it's even much less than a 1 in 25 year drought.
Understood, but is there something at, say, next year, which is like 50 years?
Well, it's the recurrence interval basically. If you look at the gauges, it's just like a 25 year, 100 year storm. Yeah, there'll be, if you have a 100 year gauge and you rank that data, there'd be recurrence interval 25, 50, 75, 100. Yes, but that also would be another extreme event that would also curtail site operations based upon monitoring, based upon pass-bys, based upon that. And it's also sustainable. So if that happens in 1 year and it's reduced because of the permit conditions, the next year when you get the rain back, the water is going to be there again. So it's based on a returning sustainable use.
Okay, last question real quick. With regards to the actual extraction process, when you're withdrawing, say, the 135 gallons per, you discussed that within that sandstone sediment area that's porous, that's holding the aquifer, there'd be a decrease in pressure. With that decrease in pressure, is there going to be a lot of land movement associated with that in some manner where homeowners may have to worry about other things outside of the water aspects where there could be foundation cracking, things of that nature? Yes.
Absolutely not. This is the hard rock aquifer, where you've heard of land subsidence maybe in California, where there were alluvial aquifers that they were buoyed by the water, and they've done extraction, but not only extraction, they've done mining. They've done groundwater mining. So the water levels would be here, and they're now 100 feet lower, so those pore spaces that were filled with water have compacted. In this case, we're not allowed to do groundwater mining, one. Two, the aquifer is different. It's a sandstone aquifer that will not have compaction when you have that. If in the extreme case that you would have it, we showed on our map that the most drawdown is right on the site is about 30 feet. So if there was any, and I don't see, I have not seen that in sandstone aquifer, but if there was to be any settlement, it would be right where the well is.
Thank you. Joanne?
I would like to take my supervisor hat off and just put my resident hat on and my business owner hat on and share my concerns. And they are that we came here 47 years ago, and 14 years after we came, we started a business. And that business has grown over the years and is now a family business. But we've always had a plan that on the average of every 6 years, we would expand a little more and a little more. And this business has allowed us to provide jobs for 55 people and a service to the elderly community. And one of our biggest concerns now is how it's going to affect us, because we're a public water supplier, and of course we have wells. How it's going to affect our septic systems if there is any kind of issues with severe droughts. The impact on the roads is a very big concern of ours, because we have elderly drivers. We have people pulling into a driveway right off of the Kunkletown Road, if that happens to be one of the pathways that the trucks go. There are no shoulders on the roads, and when there's snow, there's definitely no shoulders on the roads because the snow is right there. We also have a land development plan in the township, because we're always looking ahead to how we can better serve the community, serve the people that we have jobs for. And so that usually means there's going to be some kind of growth or advancement in the business. And now it's become a family business, so the family is in there doing the same thing. And I would not probably consider coming into this community if I had to deal with all these trucks on the road, regardless of how often it would happen. And I may not have proof that somebody's going to tell me that there's a change in the real estate value. It's just common sense that I would not choose to come to a community that has these kinds of issues going on. And so I have fear for all the hard work that my husband and I and our family have done over the years. And when we came here, we tried to provide something for the community that they could take advantage of. And so I just wanted to take this time to make my statement.
I'm teasing, sit down.
Oh, now he's gonna use the mic.
Here you walked away. We heard you, we talked to you, we walked away.
Artist Sweeney
Yes.
again. My question, I don't even know who to direct it at. But in the conversation tonight, I understand that this isn't only Nestle's one site, you have other sites.
Yeah. Yes.
How many of them are rural? I'd like to talk, somebody talk to me.
Yes, ma'am, most of the sites are very rural.
How many of them?
In eastern Pennsylvania, 6.
6. How long have you been drawing water from these other 6 communities?
20 years.
20 years. Do you have any data
Absolutely. We have
On-
reams of data.
on the effects of Nestle's drawing water on these communities? How are these communities faring? How are their school systems doing?
The operations that we have been operating, our operations in the other communities have been operated sustainably. They have not affected the water availability or anybody's access to water in those communities at all.
Oh, what about the traffic? I'm sure you have people, do all of these go down to the Nestle's bottling company?
They do.
They do. So how has the traffic affected these, I'm assuming they're rural areas very similar to what we have here.
Some are more rural than others, yes.
How are they coping with Nestle's traffic?
I've gotten no feedback negative on it, so.
Have you gotten any feedback?
Actually, I have, and it's been positive, but we haven't had any problems at all.
People in the community, have you followed these communities and their complaints? Have you inquired about any of these other communities where you are?
Yes, in some of the other communities where folks had similar concerns as yours, water, trucks, we did receive complaints about trucks on occasion early in our operations. We maybe made some adjustments to our operations to try to, resolve any issues, and we do not hear complaints in those communities where we operate.
There's been no adverse effects from
No.
Nestle's on it, so we can expect the same here. There would be no adverse. It's like you're not even here.
I wouldn't say it's not like we're not even here, but
be there.
we intend to be a positive presence in the communities where we have operations, and I think we've done that in the communities that we've been withdrawing water from for 20 years.
Is that through a donation, or is that through, like you proposed here, $750,000?
Sure.
Well, that wouldn't even buy one farm here.
Understood.
Understood.
We
Is that
make
$175,000 over 25 years? Is that what Nestle's is going to put into
I'm
this
sorry, I
community?
didn't hear the question.
I had heard that you had a $175,000 fund set up
No.
for the,
No, the $750,000 community benefit fund that we would establish if we were permitted and we move into operations, that's money that could be allocated however the community felt appropriate.
now, is that
In
every
addition
year,
to
or is
that,
that a
no,
one-time
that's
thing?
one time, but in addition to that, we would also make monetary contributions to the community, different organizations in the community, whether it be the township or the fire company or other organizations in the community. That would be ongoing every year.
And have you thought at all, if there is an adverse effect, to put a central water system in here? Like you're putting 2 towers over there? Why couldn't you put a tower in somewhere here or on that property? Designated to the people in this community.
Our intent is to develop a water supply that would not have an adverse impact on other people in the community. So therefore, a community water system would not be needed.
So you don't need to even consider that?
I don't believe so, because we intend to operate a facility that would not have adverse impacts on other people's water supplies.
I have two. Can I?
Follow up with what Artis was saying though. I live right on the drill site my property butts up against. I've marked on my calendar. I've lived in my house 24 years. It was my great grandparents' house before that. So I've been in that house 55 years of my life. For the first time, we have sulfur now. Eric, did I not tell you about the sulfur?
You did.
What was done about the sulfur?
I don't believe anything was done, but I'm going to turn that question over to Lou.
Okay,
Hopefully
turn it
you
over
can
to
address it.
whoever.
You indicated there's sulfur in your well that's drilled, and you're in a low area next to the stream.
I'm right on south side of town.
In our experience, in wells located at the stream, occasionally sulfur can happen. On the site that we were drilling, we were across the stream in the shale, and those wells had no effect from the pumping that we did on the test.
But
now, if you have a problem with your well, I'm sure that, pardon me?
Nestle's gonna take care of it?
It's part of the residential protection commitment,
That is
residential well
another
protection
thing.
commitment.
I have been, Eric, how many times have I asked to see that agreement?
We've spoken about the agreement.
We've spoken, but I've never seen it.
Well, Donna, let me clarify. There's no agreement at this point in time. We've made a residential well protection commitment, which is basically we'd like to turn that into an agreement between Nestle Waters North America and Eldred Township. It's not an agreement yet. It's something we would commit to doing if the project were to move forward.
You don't have an example from Penargil or Reverend Nutropole?
No, every community's
Every
well protection
community's
agreement is
different?
different. They're structured a little bit differently, and yes.
I've never had sulfur for 55 years. I have my dates marked when we started smelling it. I've gone to you, I went to Phil Getty. Is this an example of what we're up against? Well, he just said no.
In my professional opinion, and I'll certainly lean on Lou too, no, it's not a result of anything that we did at the site.
Thank you.
There you go, right off the bat. Right off the bat. Really
Wow.
right off the bat.
Can I go?
Keep in mind when the DEP was here and the DRVC was here, they certainly suggested that we as individuals do some routine monitoring of wells, at least to establish a baseline, and so you would have something to compare
I have a
to.
baseline to start with.
All right.
My damage is done. Thank you.
All right, we'll have 2 more questions.
I would just like to make a comment, refresh Mr. Anders's memory. At the last planning board meeting, and I hope our tape picked it up, I asked him, why would you have been here for 2-3 years, and then 28 days before you sign the agreement, you bring up the issue of being able to extract the water in that zone. I said water extraction was never allowed in that industrial zone. So why would you have waited a couple years and then wait until you want to sign the agreement and then ram it through? He said, we didn't think about it. Was that your answer that you gave?
That's not my recollection.
Well, you don't remember that. You don't remember.
I'm sorry.
That's not my recollection, Vernon.
You
That
don't
is not my
remember.
recollection.
You
What-
don't remember. You don't recollect it.
You have a short memory. Because
I apologize, I don't remember my exact
specifically said
words
we
from a month
didn't
ago.
think about it. That was your
You
answer
don't
to
remember.
Eric.
He didn't write it down.
And if it's on tape, we'll look at it together. Hopefully it is.
Yeah, maybe you did.
That's why we can't trust you. Pure and simple.
Yes, sir.
It's Chip.
Good evening. My name is Jim Preston, and I represent several residents of the township, and in particular, Clinton Donna Deal, Arlene Dunkelberger, and Paul and Lisa LaMonaco, probably another 80 or so other residents. The questions that I have for the panel here, I'll raise those, I'll save those for the zoning hearing. I have a comment for the board. One of the things that I have done on behalf of my clients is we've taken an appeal, or a challenge, if you will, to the ordinance that enables these gentlemen to be here this evening. And just for the record, I'd like to note it for the record that that's filed at Montgomery County docket number 9478, CV 2015. I think it's also important to note that the application for special exception that was filed by Nestle was filed after that appeal. So that application was filed knowing that the ordinance under which that application was filed had been challenged and is being challenged. I do believe that they're proceeding at their own risk. And just one other comment, I think, just listening to the comments here this evening, I think one of the reasons why you're getting a lot of the blowback that you're getting, and why this project is probably not suited for this particular site, is that because of the chain of events that led to the amendment of the ordinance to allow this to be here, that unfortunate chain of events has caused this project to be located at a property that it was never intended for. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of this in terms of the infrastructure, the roads, different things, the problems that you have with it. It's because this township never intended for this use to be located at that property. They're making a claim that it's located there now under the amended ordinance. I'm not going to litigate that case here this evening, but I think there's some problems with the amended ordinance. But I do want that on the record. I do want it known that I do believe that they are proceeding at their own risk. Thank you. That's all.
I'd like to just make one last comment, apologize to the crowd.
Go ahead.
I I want to apologize for using foul language before. Lawyers can't get into that. I believe I did make the point. He was trying to say that, you know, manufacturing light's undefined and the MPC gives latitude, and that's true. However, manufacturing is defined in the ordinance, and water extraction was considered manufacturing. But we won't litigate that further. Following on the solicitor's comments, I wanted to point out that one of your objectives here is to see that the comprehensive plan is not violated. And I want to mention 6 ways that this is violated due to the manner in which this amendment was passed that should, in my opinion, should not have been passed.
Sir, you know, it would also actually be helpful if you have that in writing. You can give that to the plan. I mean, you can say it too, but you know.
I will hand this in.
Okay, thank you.
Make sure you make a copy of it.
Yeah. This is not in harmony with the following goals of the comprehensive plan. On page 1-4, common land use designations and definitions. When CJIR was created, now CJIR, their main objective was to create common definitions and common definitions of uses across the entire region. And if you look today, everybody else has this defined as industry, and because of this change, ours is defined as manufacturing, lake. Preserve open space corridors on page 4-2 along creeks to preserve water quality and natural features. On page 4-7, identify the appropriate character of future commercial and industrial development, minimize the conflict between non-residential and residential uses, foster compatibility between present and future land uses. In land use, manufacturing light or light manufacturing, any land use planner and a solicitor that's familiar with land use knows that that is a lower intensity than industrial uses and manufacturing. If you look at our ordinance, it's clear that manufacturing is considered the same level of intensity as industrial uses. You do not locate those next to residential development if you can help it. My understanding is Mr. Andrus made a comment at some point along the way to residents, I wish all those houses weren't there. And my assumption is that in general they don't locate next to houses. Page 4-7, allocate land uses over the entire region in an appropriate manner rather than on a municipal basis. That's exactly what happened here. They changed one town and left all the others a different way. On page 4-7, identify significant natural resource lands and stream corridors for perpetual open space conservation. And then lastly, on page 620, locate extraction industries in an industrial zone. And that's exactly where it was located until the change was made. And that's all covered in section 1208.4A of the ordinance that you're supposed to check house to see how if this is compatible with the comprehensive plan. I had sent a couple planners some recommendations, and one of them included staying issuance of a permit, and I'm withdrawing that request, and I didn't see it on your list. My understanding is, and I've confronted this myself in the past, that an applicant will proceed at their own risk. And that's all I have to say. I did want to ask Mr. Andrus, before I got upset and swore, is it common for Nestle to set up shop for a few years in an area where they're not certain that they have a permitted use and go and contract people like EarthRes and sit for 2 years, for 2 years study a site? I mean, is that common? And then find out possibly that they weren't really permitted use?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's common, but it's not necessarily uncommon either. We felt that there was an interpretation that would allow that use in the commercial zoning district.
Normally you would contact the zoning.
Don, if I could
I'm sorry.
just finish my answer.
Yeah.
The water quality and quantity monitoring that we were conducting over that period of time was very low cost monitoring, so we were not putting much money at risk, so that's why we continue to do so.
I have a quick policy question for you gentlemen, Mr. Eric. You keep talking about community and how you love the communities around you. I moved away from the city to be in the rural area. I wanted to move away from all this stuff, but I started doing research on Nestle. I can't find anything positive about the Nestle organization. In fact, I found just numerous upon numerous upon numerous amounts of articles about the same thing you're doing in this town, the exact same thing, coming in late night deals, padding pockets, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to try to keep this positive, but I just have two quick anecdotes, and this is just, these are articles online and things that are backed up by fact, but this is more of a policy question. Quickly, the CEO of Nestle states that water is not a human right. What do you say to the farmers and people in this community that rely on that water for their livelihood?
Water is absolutely a human right.
No, I didn't ask that question. I said, what do you feel about your CEO of Nestle stating this question?
What I feel about is his comment was taken out of question. I believe that comment was made about 10 years ago.
It doesn't matter. It's a quote. Should I read the quote? I can read the quote.
I understand your point.
Okay.
My point is I believe his comments were taken out of context since that comment was made, and we feel it was incorrectly interpreted. The CEO has made it very clear that the company believes that water is a basic human right. Our company is committed to doing things in the communities where we have operations to try to provide water resources, especially in those third world countries that don't have them. So the company has clarified the position.
Okay, so it's changed since then. And my other thing is, what really brings me here is I am very deeply disturbed about the not allegations, it's been said by Nestle that this is true. You're battling 2 court cases right now on 2 different continents about child slavery. I've read the reports. You've known about this as early as 2005. These kids are as young as 6 years old. They're beaten. It's appalling to me that an organization that you guys are backing, this organization, and I understand it doesn't have to do with water, but you're talking about neighbors and communities, and anybody that uses child slavers and beats children. I can't be a human being and sleep at night and let my children and my grandchildren know that I let this type of organization into my community.
I agree, and Nestle has worked very hard over the years to ensure that throughout the supply chain there was no child slavery going on.
But they've known about it since 2005 and nothing's been changed, so it's about a decade.
I can't speak to,
okay.
I honestly can't speak
I understand that.
But what I do know is many large companies that have supply chains that extend far out, well beyond the Nestle name, into other companies, that is a problem. They're trying to rid that of the supply chain.
The comment, just so everybody knows, the comment by Nestle is that because everybody else is using child slaves, it's okay for them to use child slaves.
I don't believe that's true.
I don't believe that should be fair either. And I have one last one. I apologize. I just saw this today, but it sounds very relevant to what's happening here. The quote is, Michigan water wars. Nestle pumps millions of gallons for free while Flint pays for poisoned water. And I'll quote it real quick. One of the most surprising things about this story is that in Mancosta County, Nestle is not required to pay anything to extract the water, besides a small permitting fee to the state and the cost of leases to a private landowner. In fact, the company received $13 million in tax breaks from the state to locate the plant in Michigan. The spokesperson for Nestle in Michigan is Deborah Muchmore. She's the wife of Dennis Muchmore, Governor Rick Snyder's chief of staff. And I just wondered if you could...
My responsibility is the Mid-Atlantic region. I cannot speak on behalf of anything in Michigan.
Okay, these are our neighbors, guys. These are who we want our neighbors to be. Thank you.
Eric, I have a question. Just a couple questions. These are very short questions. They're just technical in nature. Is your sustainability opinion at all based on the fact that remediation is required in the event there's a problem with neighboring wells?
The sustainability is based upon the water resource analysis that we did, and I think you said, is it based upon remediation of neighboring wells?
Yes, it's based at all upon the fact that there has to be remediation to neighboring wells if there's a problem.
I think that's a commitment in Nestle that if there is a problem, and in this instance we do not believe there will be, that there's a commitment to mitigate that.
That's not a part of your sustainability analysis, is that correct?
No, it was, we in our presentation, we pointed out to the west to wells that have had a pressure decrease during the monitoring of the tests. And we pointed it out head on.
I know, I understand that. I just want to be clear that you're not being influenced by the fact that there's an obligation to remediate a neighboring well.
No, I mean, the analysis shows, and we could get into this at another time, that the water that supplies those wells is coming from the hill above those wells to the west. It's not the same water that Nestle is looking at extraction from the site to the east.
Okay. My next question is, there was a negative impact to two of the wells, we said, on the western side. Could that negative impact be mitigated by simply limiting the amount of the water withdrawal? In other words, if you went down to 150,000 or 100,000, would that negative impact of those wells not occur?
Again, we didn't. There was a pressure response in their wells. We did not take the water from their wells, and so the sustainability was based upon the available water that was coming from the east to those wells.
Okay, but would that impact not have occurred if you lessened the amount of the withdrawal?
In a confined aquifer, the pressure increased very rapidly, whether we did one test or two. That's the way the pressure works in a confined aquifer. So the sustainability does not take that into account, in that the water that we are getting is coming from the east.
I know, just a simple question. If you had done the test scenario on a lesser withdrawal amount, would it have had a different impact on those wells?
And again, the impact, in your words, is we have a pressure response in those wells. We do not believe that there is an impact to the water availability in those wells.
Now, you would agree, in terms of planning concepts, that the amount of water, the amount of water you're taking out of the basin on a percentage basis is higher than the amount of the land acreage on the Gower Tract compared to the overall acreage in the basin. Is that correct?
That is your premise of it. But the water permitting is not done on a, we talked about it earlier, it's not done on a per property basis based upon the aquifer, it's based upon the recharge areas.
Okay, but
I mean, when you draw water from your well at home, the water that's feeding your well is coming from rainfall that's coming off of your property. If you put a water supply in at the Kunkletown store, that water supply in a stream would be coming from stream water coming off your property.
Well, just tell me if I understand your report correctly, that the Gower Tract is equal to 21% of the acreage of the basin. Is that correct? And that the water,
I don't know that number. There was, we cursorily got the Hanover Township Engineering. I think that's where that analysis is, not an analysis we did. So I can't verify the percentage of numbers that you're telling me.
Okay, and the last thing is that if the Nestle's plant is treated as a public water supply source, the wellhead protection zones kick in, and that can limit the type of land use within those wellhead protection zones. Is that correct?
The land, certainly within the wellhead protection zone, we define where our water is coming from, and if there's other uses outside in the township's wellhead protection zone, Nestle would not oppose those uses.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about in terms of future development, couldn't that be limited under the current township ordinance by the fact that now those uses will be in a wellhead protection zone?
I would have to defer to the zoning analysis of that.
The answer, Mr. Gall, is yes. For example, in the wellhead protection area, Zone 2, you're not allowed to have confined animal feeding lots like 1,000 pigs. You are allowed to have them generally in a livestock area. It's a permitted use. If somebody tried to put a 1,000 pig farm within the zone of a well, they would not be allowed. There are certain other uses where they would need to get a special exception use, and your ordinance is very clear on those. Most of the uses, and we went down and compared all of the uses in the zones, and there are some uses, and I think I can tick them off the top of my head. One is sewage sludge application is not allowed within the half-mile area. Large bulk underground storage tanks are not allowed. I'd mentioned the concentrated animal feeding lots. Now I have to take out my glasses. Oops, wrong glasses. No sun today. Oh, the large volume sewage disposal systems, that was the other one that I didn't do from my memory. Yeah. He has better eyes than I do. Okay.
I have one question for Eric. Maybe you can clarify this. I understand that the previous landowner who Rick Garr bought the land from, is it true that he still has mineral rights on that property?
I'm going to ask him to address that question.
The reason I asked, I wonder if the previous owner has the mineral rights, do they know what is happening on that land?
I'm under the same mineral rights and I don't have them anymore.
Yeah, I would have to go back to the title search records, but my understanding is the one set of mineral rights that was at one time outstanding with respect to, there was a quarry on that site. I believe that as a result of their giving up their mine, they may still have something, but they have nothing they can mine. And they basically, with respect to what they could extract from that site, have already done it.
I think it's the white brick factory that the mineral rights.
I just wonder, I'd heard the previous owner still had the mineral rights, and how this would work out if they will want to come back.
But now those are all.
But they didn't keep the surface rights in their, I believe at this point, they could not come on unless they tried to do surface mining. They couldn't do surface mining.
Thank you.
And by the way, I don't believe surface mining would be allowed under your ordinance in that district at this point.
Okay. Helen tells me. Oh, I'm sorry. One more.
I'd like to ask 2 or 3 quick questions, if I could.
2.
Make it short.
To me?
No, to the geologist.
Okay.
3 quick questions.
Lou.
I know the boreholes that you plan on accessing are already drilled and are identified. I'd like to know what the elevation is that each of those boreholes exists at.
Certainly, I have a plan here. I have a cross section with those exact elevations if you'd like to go. I mean, there's a lot of numbers for the wells. I'd be happy to go over it with you.
Well, I'm only concerned about the elevation that borehole 1 and borehole 2 exist at.
So I could pull out the application and look at the specific numbers for you because it's a specific question.
Well, I checked with you.
Want to check afterwards? We could.
Yeah, that's fine.
Certainly.
The second question is, since we all now know that this aquifer travels from east to west, is there any reason in the world why the cone of depression was kept at such a small level, traveling in an easterly direction? I would have thought, since this aquifer is a very large aquifer, carrying pristine water, and coming from the east, I would have thought someone would be required to establish a much larger cone of depression than 1,000 feet, which is my understanding what currently was used. Are you in agreement with that number?
We could look at the map and also measure it off of the cone of depression was actually determined from the testing that was done at the site. So those are actual measurements of water levels when the boreholes are being pumped. Jeez, what's it doing?
I mean, doesn't that seem like an extremely small cone of depression? for testing purposes in such a large aquifer, especially when you're only traveling roughly 1,000 feet in the direction that you know the water is coming from?
Yes, I mean, it's a prolific aquifer, water's coming down the hill, but those are actual measured cone, that's an actual measured cone of depression based upon the data collected during the test. And it's also limited to the north and the south by the geology. So the geology to the north and south, we have clay and we have some other units that aren't sandstone, so the drawdown's not propagated in that direction. And the water table coming down the hill is such that it's fairly steep. And so when you draw the water, it's pulling from the water that's coming down the hill to you, so yes.
Okay. But you still didn't answer my question.
Which is?
Isn't 1,000 feet a very small cone of depression for testing purposes in such a large watershed with such a strong aquifer?
It is what we measured, sir. It's what, when the testing was done, that was actually what was measured in the cone of depression.
Let me put the question this way. Should the cone of depression that you measured should it not have been made larger?
The cone of depression is actually measured from actual measurement data. I cannot make it larger, I cannot make it smaller. It is what the data tells me that the water levels are.
Did you put any gauges on the Princess Run Creek and measure the effect on the Princess Run when you were doing all your testing and your drawdown?
The Princess
Run is a fairly substantial contributor to the Buckwa.
And it's located up gradient of the Buckwa. So we had a gauge on the Buckwa, so any contribution coming down from the Princess Run would have been measured in the gauge that we had on the Buckwa Creek.
But that wouldn't show what your impact might be on the water that would have come down the Princess Run versus what might have come down because of your testing.
Okay, so there's a principle of kind of superposition in when you're doing the testing. You have a source of extraction and you have wells next to it, and we have wells surrounding it that show the drawdown was less and less as we went to the north. So
went to the north or went to the east?
To the north. Princess Run is located to the north and to the east, so it's also in a shale. It's over a different geologic unit. So if we have close into the site, no impact, at a distance farther from the site, we would have zero impact. Because the impacts are going to be the greatest closest to the drawdown. So we have monitoring wells that go to the north into the shale that had no drawdown. So if you're going across the creek, further up to the east and on the Princess Creek, there would be no impact. And in that area, I'd have to look at the map. We could look there. There's some wells that we had in there. So we also, we didn't monitor the stream per se because we were monitoring it at the Buckwa, but we also monitored a couple wells in that direction.
Private properties?
Yes, we have some private property wells.
My last question is this. Since you tested to see what the maximum amount of water is that could be taken without causing a problem supposedly to residential wells, and that test showed 525,000 gallons per day, is it Nestle's intention over a period of the next 25 or 35 or 45 years to move in the direction from 200,000 gallons per day to potentially 525 or 550,000 gallons a day? Because we know after tonight's meeting, or after this session is over, the zoning hearing board, Eldred Township won't have anything to say about this in the future. This will be strictly a DEP, DRBC exercise in determining how soon and how high, or how much higher the levels are that they're allowed to pump.
Yeah, I'm not.
Is it the intention? Are we starting out at 200,000 with every intention to suck every possible gallon we can out of here in the future? Once we can get Eldred Township out of the picture, and we just have to play with the DEP and the DRBC.
Terry, that's not our strategy. At this point in time, we have no intention of seeking a higher withdrawal limit. I will not say never. If down the road the data indicate that more water might be available, we may consider it. It's absolutely not our intention at this point in time. I don't think we would, but again, I don't believe that would be the case.
Okay, thank you.
Biggest answer I've ever heard.
Oh,
have a specific question for a specific.
I just want to know, is there like a bulleted list of points that are made in both the documentaries Blue Gold and Bottled Life that are refuted by Nestle, Mr. Weston? Is there a list of items in those documentaries that Nestle doesn't agree with?
I apologize, I didn't hear the question.
I'm just wondering, is there a list of items in the documentaries, Blue Gold and Bottled Life, that Nestle disagrees with? And can you provide that list to us so that we could be better informed?
Sure, I'll be glad to provide Nestle Waters' response to those various documentaries. I don't know
Because
that
I know there's a
form.
website, I know that, but I'm kind of tired of all this time that I've spent on this, and I would really like to just have a list, since there's so many of you working there, and you probably have that list.
We do. We
Right.
absolutely have responses to the various documentaries, anti-Nestle or anti-bottled water, that I can provide to you. If you'd like to provide me your email address, I'll be glad to send them to you, or mail them, whatever you prefer. There's a lot of documentaries out there, and I have to say they're not based on fact.
Helen tells me she's been in meetings that last well past 1, so we haven't broken any records tonight. That you've been in meetings that lasted past 1 o'clock in the morning.
Well, the Cinderella's carriage is going home very shortly.
That's right. Thank you, Nestle's and your colleagues. I think it was important for you to hear our residents. Some asked certainly cultural questions, some asked pinpointed questions, and I think you've enlightened us, and I think we can proceed how we choose to. As I've said numerous times before this, a lot of people had some great ideas, and they can be very specific, and they also can be very cultural. Make sure they get submitted, because I think from this point forward, there will not be a lot of opportunity unless you're a protestant, an official protestant in front of the zoning hearing board to voice your opinion. I don't know, I'm anticipating the planning commission having another special session. We're going to put a document together based on what was discussed at their last special session, and we'll probably have another one, but probably not before the zoning hearing board. Again, it's our intention to get our recommendations at the zoning hearing board as soon as possible. All right, other old business? I don't think so. Public comment. The public comment is only directed to the planning commission, not to our participants. This is to the planning commission.
I understand.
Okay.
Is there still suppressing the room, or they're walking out? I had sent something to the Times News and to the Pocono Record, and I didn't send it to the Planning Commission, and I believe they may be gone. I don't know who this gentleman's from, but I'll make this as brief as possible. There's something called the Wimmer Letter, which some people are familiar with. It's essentially the amendment that started this. If it hadn't been for this, we wouldn't be here. And I've worked it up, which I believe it has several misrepresentations and false statements. And I also worked up a flow of how an amendment should pass through the system, and then a flow of how the amendment actually did pass through the system. I do want to make one point here. That is that, yes, it appears that our supervisors didn't actually authorize the amendment. They didn't authorize the advertisement of the amendment. The final advertisement, there was an advertisement. It was done by Seizure, and Seizure's solicitor, evidently. Their names are on it. But here's the rub. Neither Seizure did not meet between those two Seizure meetings, between the first one at which Mr. Helfers, the planning consultant, had this amendment in his hand that he had drafted based on said faulty letter. He turned it into a two-word change, which he then sent back to the supervisors, which sent it on to your planning commission, and sent it to the Monroe County Planning Commission. Only sent the two-word change, didn't send this, which if people saw it would pretty quickly realize, if they have got two brain cells, there's problems here. and it shouldn't have happened. Here's the thing. He's the consultant for Seizure. Your tax dollars help pay for this guy. The planning consultant was a shared expense through all the different Seizure townships. He needs to be dragged in and explain, he did get this. The landowner's attorney sent this directly to him instead of sending it to the town. He's got questions to answer. He's the one that knows that you don't locate industry next to residential uses. There's no comment in the record. The two Seizure meetings on March 27th and May 1st, there's transcripts of them. They were like your zoning hearing board's going to be. And Mr. Helfrich was at the first one. He described this as being a simple amendment. And he made it clear to Ms. Clausen, who actually asked a question. He said between now and May 1st, we can only have simple amendments. A land use change is not a simple amendment, and he's the guy that should have said, by the way, he did say that night on March 27th, I've got this in my hand. Will you authorize me to move it forward? And the supervisors did not authorize him to move it forward, yet he did. And he sent it to the Planning Commission, the Monroe County Planning Commission, who also has questions to answer. They had this in their hands. And they also are professionals who should have known that it was nonsense. What did they get after that? He sent it to the director, Ms. DeTore. He sent it to two planners, Meinhardt Fritz and Koopman. I spoke with Mr. Koopman, and I asked him, what did you get from Eldred Township to review? They had official review, state dollar, there were grant dollars used. Imagine this, you got Seizure. We got a regional body, and we're gonna get all these shared uses, and that's one of the things you can get grant dollars for. Well, they got them. But here, Mr. Koopman and Ms. Fritz, Meinhardt Fritz, who are the planners, they got this. But it evidently went into a file somewhere. A week or two later, they got the two-word amendment from that Mr. Helfrich, the planning consultant, drafted. And when I asked Mr. Koopman for what did you review and recommend back, and he told me it was this, only this. He didn't say, oh, we got this too and it's in a folder. He did have a serious look on his face like, I wish you weren't asking me these questions. The Monroe County Planning Commission let us down. Mr. Helfrich, by all means, the planning consultant. He's like, where's Waldo? You never see the guy. He evidently drafted these changes in his office. Nobody could, it wasn't in public. It's supposed to be in public like this when you make land use changes so the citizenry can give input. I know, I said I was going to be brief. I'm wrapping up. And then the Seizure member townships. The Seizure intergovernmental agreement dictates that they have input when there's an amendment. There's no record that this was sent to them. He had it in his hands. I'm finishing up on March 27th. They agreed their next meeting would be on their rescheduled meeting. They weren't going to adopt them that night. These simple last-minute changes would be adopted on May 1st with all the other amendments. They knew they had these amendments in their hand. Do you think Seizure scheduled a meeting in April between those two to review those amendments? They canceled their April meeting. They didn't do their job. So there's serious questions to be answered. I'm going to go ahead and submit these just to get them into the record. And I really think that there's questions that need to be answered. And I hope that we get some answers at some point in time. Thank you.
Okay. Helen.
Nope, I'm done. I went home at 12 o'clock.
Wait for a motion, I think.
I'll make a motion to do what? Make a motion to adjourn.
We'll hear a second.